There's a lot of reasons to be upset about travel. But I saw this thing today, and I'm going to say it brought me like a little genuine sadness. It was news that Southwest Airlines is getting rid of open seating. I
Oh,
feel like this is like I felt like a little sad. Like this is sort of like I've lived through the generation. Like the good times are over. Not like listen, I'll still fly Southwest. I live here in Austin, Texas. It's one of the main airlines. It's very convenient. It's generally reasonably priced. I guess that can be debatable, but there's just something about like when you're going to Southwest, you're not going to have what they call it, like gate fleece, where it's like everyone's pushing. I think that's what I really
oh,
like about
yes.
Southwest is the orderly boarding process. It's like you may be upset where you're boarding, you may not like it, or you may like it, but it's very clear what to do. When it's your
Mhm.
turn, you stand up, you find the number, you'll wait, just like in elementary school. You
Yep.
wait till the leader waves you in.
And
It
the line polices itself. People are like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, you're B40.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And people respect it. And you walk back, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I got on the wrong side. And to see that Southwest is going to, if you will, adopt the quote unquote legacy airline model where, whatever, it's pay more for seat selections and,
Yeah. Well, I
it's
mean,
going to have
they
like
already had
the
that.
17 tiers of, of boarding. It's like, are you elite? Are you platinum? Are you platinum gold? Are you a military person wearing your uniform? So it's just sad. It's just a generally sad moment. So do you share this kind of sadness, or am I being overly nostalgic in my love of the Southwest Airlines boarding process?
Well, I mean, I obviously haven't flown them in a while, and I don't know if that was a contributing factor. Like, have they ever been part of any businesses like travel planning? They're like, this is the airline for us. Um, but I thought what was funny is I could tell one of my kids had read an article about it because they were like, "What do you think of Southwest becoming a legacy carrier?" I was just like, where did you get that phrase? Right.
Uh-huh.
But I mean,
To your child's credit, correct phrase. That
exactly.
is the
But
term
it's
of
like,
art. Uh-huh.
so clearly, they're reading from the interwebs. But yeah, I mean, I haven't flown them much lately. I guess it just means, they will probably start reducing the size of baggage and charging more for carry-ons just like everybody else. I mean, it's
Yeah, that bags fly free slogan. That's not going to age well. That
oh
feels like
yeah,
that's
yeah. That's
quickly
like
coming
do
to
no
an
evil, right?
Yeah, I don't think
It's
that's going
gone.
to go well. No.
Yeah. So yeah, they're joining the ranks of the ranks.
But on this whole thing, because we talk a lot about private equity, and this seems to be spurred on by an activist investor. And of course, about a year ago, Southwest Airlines, I don't even know, maybe it was a year and a half ago, they had that major winter, scheduling snafu. It cost them billions of dollars. So it looks like the plan from the or activist investor was to,
Right.
if you will, adopt, like, pay for the seating thing, right? And
Yeah.
then it looks like the next part is just basically fees, right? Just going to add a lot more fees.
Mhm.
So, if this were a software company, I think maybe we would say something like, they're losing their soul. This is what differentiated them, right? This is
Right.
like what actually made them different. But I guess my most brutal assessment is just like the reason you flew Southwest was it was generally just cheaper. Like that's
Right.
like the number one thing.
Generally. Yeah, not
Again,
always.
not always, but like you could generally count on it. Like this is going to be cheaper. Now, in hindsight, or maybe this is where they are, is like it isn't always the case. They're cheaper, which maybe ultimately, and maybe in the end, it's nothing. I mean, this would be a great retort to myself. Would be like, listen, in the end of the day, Brandon, it's not about seating assignments or anything else. All it's really about is if you can't have more competitively priced flights, then you just have nothing. You're just like the same old, same old. So maybe is that like the brutal business thing to take away here? It's like they just can't price cheap flights anymore, and all the other stuff, the culture, the people that are nice, the snacks, the way they sing songs in their boarding process, that they generally seem like more happy people than the legacy
Yeah.
carriers. I don't know. That seems to be. I know that's a huge
I
generalization.
think they're heavy on profit sharing, right?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't know about that part, but it's. I don't know. I guess it's like I'll leave it to you. Am I overly nostalgic, or is this going to be? Are we really? Should I really be like the Southwest culture is gone forever?
It's gone. Right. I mean, they were kind of trying to straddle the middle ground between, the quote unquote premium airlines, your Deltas, Americans, and then the budget airlines, your Frontiers and I guess Allegiant, and and they were kind of in the middle where they were like, oh, we got good prices, but we got good service. And now you're like, no, we're gonna have good prices and fees like Ryanair.
Well, I guess for everyone, listening, Southwest, I'll always love the old Southwest, even though I have to fly the new Southwest. All right. And then for those that are listening right now on the stream, great to have you here. Always fun
Give
to
me a
have you
second.
here. And you're going to see when you listen to the actual show, you're going to have a nice ad from our friends at SysAid. And did you know? And while Matt's figuring it out, what is SysAid, you may ask? It's the next gen IT service management experience, the only platform with generative AI embedded in every aspect of IT management, enabling you to deliver exceptional service effortlessly and automagically. So there you go. When you hear it in the podcast, it'll be my ad voice, right? And it'll be even like more official sounding.
Wow.
And Matt's like, I can't wait to hear that in the podcast. I know, Matt. I know, it's okay. I
I
get it.
hope you have chapter markers so I can skip to it.
That's exactly right. Oh, look at this. Look who's shown off in the chat today. Mr. JJ. Hello, JJ. Good to see you. And JJ says group one means group one means all groups at AA. I like that. That's true. Sure. That is exactly true when it comes to boarding American Airlines. But I admit, just before we get back to the actual show, it's like I understand everyone complains about it, but like when you don't have status and you want to get your bag on, you're forced to like crouch up there. So everyone that complains about it, there's no other option, right? So don't, get over it. Get over it, AA people. That's all.
Get over it.
That's right. All right, you ready to talk about this meta stuff?
Yeah.
Take a deep breath, man. You're ready. You're ready. Here we go. Well, Matt, Mark Zuckerberg, I feel like, he's had his lane for a long time, consumer tech, but he's now written us a personal letter that was addressed just to Software Defined Talk, asking us to comment about his business. And it's titled, Open Source AI is the Path Forward. So he came at us. You come in our lane, we're going to respond, Mark Zuckerberg. We're not just out here. We're not going to talk about social media that we know how to run a major social media, but we are going to talk about open source when you say that, because I think we've been doing it for far too long than we like to admit. So the latest news, I guess, is this long kind of missive, not that long, actually, it's easily readable, is Mark Zuckerberg has posted this long thing about why open source is important, and more importantly, why they ultimately open source Meta's latest Llama model. And so I think, as always, Matt, we're going to start at the absolute beginning. And I think we're going to start with, I would say what he announced is not open source at all. So let's just start right off the top, right? And before we get into that, I go further. I'm just going to say, I do think it is great that these more models are publicly available. People can use them, for free and not have to do anything. And that is always good. I just kind of think that's just always a good thing. Yeah. Now, as we've seen many, many times, making something freely available and open source are radically different, in my opinion. So my immediate thought was, when I read through this, was like, no, why the model is freely available, and this is the key distinction. It's like, and I guess technically the source code to build a model is available. What is not available is all the training data, nor the actual ability to, if you will, make one of these models that costs billions of dollars,
right,
to run on various GPUs. So, that's kind of what my original thought is. Like, this is not really open source in the sense of someone could easily take this and recreate the same exact functionality. I think it's generally impossible. What were your thoughts when you saw this?
Well, that definitely continues to be the case, that they talk about this being open source and keeping the weights closed. But as I and knowing that and reading this, I kind of just keep coming back to the point of, why not finish making the code open source? They still have this weird, it's like a business source license kind of thing where the code is open source unless you make, was it 700 million a year or something
Right,
like
unless
that,
you're like Google and
or
like,
or
yeah,
or
a
Twitter,
few
or
other, yeah, a few
yeah.
other large
And to
consumer
me, I was
companies.
just like, what's the point, right? What is the point of putting that kind of arbitrary line in the sand when you're not giving people the weights anyway? So you might as well give everyone, make it real open source, like a nice Apache license or MIT or something, just to get that arbitrary line out of the way, because someone's still going to have a ton of money to build their own models and weights for it anyway. So don't you want collaborators? Don't you want people to actually try to use this? And if you're trying to claim this moral high ground of open source, then make it open source. Don't just say those words. And I actually, like, if they want to keep the weights closed, that's fine. To me, it's more objectionable that they still call it open source, right? Because you can try to run it in your home lab, which you can't build anything because you don't have any models anyway. But anybody who would be a useful participant in this open source ecosystem isn't going to be involved because of that arbitrary line in the sand. And so, like, this is just open source washing, with or without the weights. And then there are definitely other actual open source models out there that have that have opened up their weights. I believe IBM's done a bit of that. Um, Probably some others. I think maybe Snowflake did as well. So they might as well embrace open source fully. But that's the thing that just sticks in my craw the most about this. And then he goes on and says all the right things about open source, right? That it's the great leveler. We can't let a small handful of companies have control of everything. Well, that's what you're doing by trying to draw this line in the sand, right? That only small companies can engage with you. It's like, well, you're also keeping small companies from becoming big with this strategy as well. So I don't like it, but I like the things he said.
Right, but I think that what you're getting at is the other part here is like, it really just seems like a masterful, PR move here, right? Because if you read more of the major news outlets, right, and this is sort of like part of, like, I think Zuckerberg's just larger, PR makeover, like, the warm, cuddly Zuckerberg, right? Like,
Yeah.
and which is fine. I'm not against these ideas. Like, I understand them trying to do it, but it seems like how many people, even like relatively, I think, well-informed, educated tech press, sort of just like, oh, it's different. This is a different Facebook. And it's like, no, all that's going
No,
on
it's the same
here
Facebook.
is, well, that's the part I don't get. It's like, because also too, it's like, we always got to come back to like motivations. It's like, well, because it's sort of if you will, commoditizing your compliments kind of decision, right? And I think we can make some analogy to Kubernetes here in a minute. It's like, they don't have a business at all around selling to the enterprise, nor selling any type of chatbot. So it is of really, it costs them nothing to, if you will, take what you just said, take their work and make it freely available. They're not giving up anything. Obviously,
Mhm.
ChatGPT's entire business is, or OpenAI AI's business is all dedicated to like building something around these LLMs, right? And then Google, of course, has this sort of like, existential threat, right? If this was to replace the search technology, that would be a huge thing in their business.
Search
Just
GPT,
like
yeah.
um, we have seen many times with Facebook, right? They come out with these initiatives around like, hey, we're gonna like partner with journalists, like give us all your stuff and we're gonna do some revenue sharing. And then, what we would call a rug pull, they just change the agreement and the journalists are all mad. The journalists are like, they shut everything down, they're not giving us any money, and they cut off access. And then they do the next year, it's like, and this time we're doing video. We're getting into video. Everyone build video and it's gonna be like YouTube and you're gonna make tons of money. And then they shut down that stuff. I'm not even saying those are bad decisions, but I'm just saying those are sort of, if you will, shrewd business decisions that they kind of cut off larger partners that they've worked with when it makes sense for them. And then, of course, we could go into the whole idea. It's like, it's not like you can just build your own Facebook mobile app, right? They're not going to let you do that. They're not going to let you pull from the news feed. They're not going to let you take all the ads out of their social feeds or Instagram. And the list goes on. And of course, I don't, I'm not as close to it, but I'm sure the people at Snap would be like, hey, that stories idea we had was pretty good. You just kind of ripped it off. Like you didn't
Mhm.
so there's like a real ruthless business nature to these decisions, which I understand. I'm not like pretending that shouldn't happen, but I just think why so many people are, if you will, giving them so much credit for this, where it seems like just really smart business. It's like, we don't really care about this that much, right? We're going to use it internally and make tons of money. And in fact, we're going to still prevent our top competitors to use it. We're going to give it to Amazon, who we're going to make them pay some license. If there is money into it, they'll sell it and give us a little cut of it. Right. And then, of course, and this is the main thing. If you take one thing away from this episode, I think it's this. It's like, we've seen this before. So if you are building a business and you are depending on this specific freely available LLM, you need to be warned, right?
Yeah,
It is not,
absolutely.
it is very possible down the road. Like if tomorrow something were invented and we were like, oh, the business model for LLMs is this, I am sure the license for this would change overnight, right? Like
Absolutely.
everything, it's and everyone would be, I can't believe they changed it. They've taken away the ability to do it. Just like Reddit shut off the APIs or made it really expensive for that one person that was building that app that everyone liked for Reddit. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, that can definitely happen. So I feel like this is a real like caveat emptor moment for everyone. It's like, listen, if you take this and you build a business on top of it, you better make sure that you don't need another thing from this LLM going forward. And more importantly, don't even be shocked if like you just like log in one day and you're like, oh, you got to accept the updated license agreement,
Mhm.
because it has happened many, many times. So
Yeah.
I would just sort of like, we've seen this before. So no one should be surprised when that actually happens. What do you think?
I think we need to like start reclassifying licenses as, open source and closed source and rug pull source, just so everybody knows that it's coming, right?
The RPL, I
Everybody
like it. Rug
knows.
pull sword.
I mean, that's exactly what this is. This is a Trojan horse. You know that at some point, you know, it's going to change. Everyone knows it's going to change. And you could be optimistic and say, well, maybe they're going to see the light, and the open source competition is going to be there, or they're going to be convinced by Amazon or somebody that they want to work on this together, and we can collaborate and do something better than our competition if we work together. But this sort of Damocles that is just waiting to chop off your hand when you go to reach for the source someday, it's there, right? That's what's going to happen. You are going to get burned by this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but if you build your business on this, you will get screwed.
Absolutely.
Period. Yeah.
I think the message here is beware of the llama, or it's the llama. It's
Beware
the
the llama,
llama in
exactly.
sheep's clothing, right? It's like, this is, because I do think the other thing that's like, it's a little bit hard to like read. I mean, I get why, if you want to settle scores, I get it. And you can just kind of read how much Zuckerberg hates Apple, and how much
Oh,
like
yeah,
Apple changes their
it's
things.
in there.
But it's like, it's almost like, it's almost like you hate the people closest to you or the most like you. And it's like, no, Apple's is super ruthless too, just like how Meta is. And it was just hard to read the whole part about like, well, Apple is, closed this off and they've made it hard for developers. And I just want to build great things. And like, I'm just trying to do the God's work over here. And Apple's, they don't get it. And I'm doing, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We've all read the books, right? We've all seen how, what goes on in Facebook. And
Yeah.
I'm not even so much critical of it. It's like some ways I like Wall Street. And I said this before on the podcast, like, I just like Wall Street because they're just like openly hostile, right? It's like, no, you come to Wall Street and you're like, everybody knows this is
Yes.
kind of, a devil's lair, right? Like everyone's out for themselves and everyone's going to do what's best for them. But sometimes I just feel like, like it's just still like tech sometimes wraps itself in this idea of like, no, like we're just out here, we're changing the world, everything's good. And it's like behind the scenes, we know and we've observed is like, these are very ruthless businesses, right? And
Yeah.
that's okay, but sometimes it's just so hard to read some of the stuff that comes out of it. Whereas I think the CEO of Goldman Sachs is just like, no, we're here to make as much money as possible.
Well,
And if I need to, I'll cut your legs off. Where it's like there's no like greater good. It's like we're here to make money. So there's a respect I have for the Wall Street culture.
I mean, the respect is if you keep your mouth shut and you just keep working ruthlessly and don't like blab off about like of it, nobody will notice you. You just slowly become like one of the 10 richest people in the world, and people don't know who you are because you didn't have to go and buy Twitter and drive it into the ground and then sink Tesla as a side effect, right? Um, if you could just shut up and do your job, uh, you know, you can be a ruthless competitor, you can be an asshole, or, whatever you need to do. But as soon as you start like intentionally bringing this media attention on yourself, it'll have side effects. You'll start pissing off, politically one side or the other, and then you just need to like be quiet and do your job, and you know you things will follow from there. And you see it in politics, you see it in business. um this open source thing, luckily, most tech media has the memory of a goldfish, but um you know these people, they're all ruthless. They're all very competitive business people, and that's a positive and a negative, but whatever. But if you try to differentiate yourself as like, oh, we're the good guys, eventually someone will show up with the receipts that prove you are doing evil, and you have to drop the do no evil from your motto.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. And I do think, your original points here though is like how how much I think they still don't get it, because like, in the meeting when they were obviously talking about making this quote unquote open source, but let's again back to freely available. I would assume someone was like, somebody must have said, well, hey, listen, what if Google gets this or Twitter gets this or whatever, right? Like, what are we going to do? And that's where they came up with the oh, we'll cap it. And it's just like, but I think it's like you always think about like these businesses like, well, they take risk and they really understand it, and it's like there's like zero risk. To your earlier point around, just do the whole thing. Like no one's going to do anything with it, and if they do, right? Like that's good news for you, right? That means there's something's been created, and you're going to have control of a really strategic project, and you can
Mhm.
do the same thing too. And it's like I don't think Google has any interest in making Llama successful, right? They have
Right.
Gemini; they're all in
Yeah.
on that, and so the whole point about like even like it's almost like they're still too scared to do the real thing. It's like, what, just make the entire thing open source, right? Let everyone do anything with it, right? And have the confidence to be like, no, this is a great business strategy. You will even get more kudos from the broader world. But again, it's just like I think there's just like a kind of a unwillingness or almost like a scaredness of like, no, 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 I still have to control this one last part of it, right? And if I do that too much, then I'm just giving away too much. And I guess it brings me, I think there's like a good analogy here with like at least in our world, the company that has played this best, I still think, is Google and Kubernetes, right? I think they masterfully, I know that's a somewhat debated inside Google. Like, should they have open source Kubernetes? Should they have not? But I think you go back in time, they masterfully did this, right? They're like, hey, we don't want there to be another VMware. We don't want there to be only one container orchestrator and one company get all the profits. And I think Kubernetes is how you do this. They basically ultimately made the entire thing open source. It's sort of a stalemate across the industry. No one company owns container orchestration. Maybe that's good or bad. We can debate that to some degree. But I think they did in a way that was like, to your point, I think it was like pretty acceptable. I think people are pretty happy with how it all came out. I don't know. What were your thoughts on, like, if we compare this to the Kubernetes, do you think it's similar, or am I in the wrong area of even talking about it?
I think you're right. If Facebook was really worried about someone taking, all the wins, they would go all in on real open source. They would build a a CNCF for AI as an alternative to the open AI, or whoever being this masters of everything, and partner with Hugging Face and Microsoft, and people who still dabble in some open source or Mistral, or start actually saying like, look, we're gonna have a AI foundation, and we call it Open AI. The Open AI Foundation or something like that, and actually build a strategic defense against someone taking all the marbles, because that's only going halfway means, you are handicapping yourself in this race. Um, if they think that this is a real alternative to the closed source models, I think they're wrong.
I agree. I think you're totally right. And I think it'll be interesting going forward to see if there is any backlash and things like that. I kind of feel like they've gotten what they wanted out of this, though. I think the PR has been so strong that I feel like there isn't going to be ultimately much change. So I don't know. I think, but if you're going to do this, I guess I kind of come back to like Google, I think did it probably as good as you possibly can. Although I don't know, sometimes you hear there are still people I think at Google that are like very sad they open source Kubernetes and they feel like they gave away.
Well, I mean,
But I don't know,
those second thoughts are why it took Istio so long to join the CNCF. I mean, there were still resistance after the fact because people were like, "Look, we don't control Kubernetes." And it's like, yeah, but you know what? Nobody does, and you have now multi-cloud is actually a thing because of Kubernetes. I mean, if capable multi-cloud people are almost all on Kubernetes.
True. That is true. Now, the other part, the final thing I just want to say in this, I do think he said something in his that I do think everyone should try to agree with. He said something like, China is going to steal the stuff anyway. And I do think there is just something in technology. It's like, I don't know, man, you just can't like put a lot of this back in the bottle. It's like, whether just all of this stuff, it's like the idea that like you can like take LLMs and be like, no, we're going to prevent anyone else from having it. It's like, no, it just never works in technology. So that part I just totally agree with. Like the idea of people are always like, we have to stop it. No one else can know it. I'm like, no, like once we're talking about it on software defined talk, everybody knows about it. Everyone can do it. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, it's funny how quickly things go from like breakthrough to be like, oh, everyone knows how to train an AI model. Well, everybody can do it.
That undermines their story. Is they're like, oh, we've put this this cap on who can participate in this, and it's like, who doesn't care about your cap? The same people, the China, they don't care.
Like,
they're reading. They are,
great answer. That I didn't think about. That is really a great answer to the limit. It's like, do you think China's going to care about the limit? Do you think like if they decide to do something with it, they're gonna be like, whoa, the Facebook lawyers are on the phone, right?
And then it's just like, well, just tell me we don't speak English and hang up, right? And and that's that, right? Tell them like, take us to court in Beijing, right? What are you gonna do?
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Mark Zuckerberg, I didn't, you're the one who made us talk about this. You write this out about open source. We're going to get involved, so we're not going to get involved in your ad revenue. We don't know anything about that. So,
well, where's the open sourcing of, all the money they dumped into legless VR, right? I mean, like start open sourcing that stuff.
What we need is more legless PR. That is it is funny how quickly that's just like gone away. I mean, I know they're still working on it, but it does seem like just even the name Meta is kind of funny. And now it's like, no, I don't think that was probably not the right.
We're gonna dead name you Facebook till the cows come home, right?
Yeah. I mean, you name yourself whatever you want. You're still Facebook. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So. Well, the other kind of news event that we saw here that I wanted to talk about was Microsoft. So Microsoft announced its latest earnings, and I guess here was a little blurb. It says, quote, Microsoft's overall cloud revenue came in at 36.8 billion, in line with expectations of 36.8 billion. But the company's intelligent cloud revenue, which includes its Azure services, fell short, coming in at 28.5 billion versus expectations of 28.7 billion. So it's always crazy when I read these things. It's like it's like billions on top of billions. But I guess we are seeing a little bit of a narrative out there that we spent a lot on AI, especially Microsoft. They spent a lot, and for a long time, and I think we would still say they were in many ways the leader in AI. Mm-hmm. But now I think the investment analysts that once loved that are now asking questions. I think Goldman Sachs, among others, wrote a pretty long report saying it's like, we're not sure you can ever make money with this AI stuff. And we're worried that you're spending too much on the AI hardware and on all these new data centers. So I don't know. What do you think? This is sort of is this the classic Gartner hype cycle? Are we just kind of like skiing our way down the hill into the trough of disillusionment?
That was fast.
Yeah, but everything's fast now. I feel like it's like news cycles are faster and faster. Or are people missing it? Are they just like, hey, listen, it's still billions of dollars, Brandon. Seems like things are going okay at
Yeah, it's
Microsoft.
still billions that are growing and compounding. I think that is the forest here. Like, this is still a lot of money, and it's an investment in future growth. That, yeah, you didn't see it this quarter, but I think, we're gonna wake up in 2 years and be like, oh, it's tripled, or something like that, where you're like, oh, that's kind of a good number now. And I think Microsoft will be fine. I think this is a hiccup.
just in Microsoft. Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I do think, I've read some other people saying it's like, well, even if they buy all these GPUs and they don't necessarily have the demand from third parties they once thought, is like the belief is that like Microsoft internally can still use it for just the things they're developing, all of
I,
their different Office assistant and co-pilots and all these different things. So that almost is like a hedge bet for them. It's like worst case, we just use all this hardware for ourselves. Best case, we rent all this hardware to people that are going to pay us even more money because they're building
right.
something even better on it, right?
Yeah, I feel like this investment is still in a good place. The only hedge I'd put on that is there's an interesting article about Apple training their new Apple Intelligence. They didn't do it on NVIDIA. It's been done on Google's like fifth and sixth generation Tensor
Yeah, the TPUs,
GPUs,
right?
which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of interesting that you don't hear about that hardware much. And then as I kind of read more about the details on that, it sounded like Apple was buying the hardware directly from Google. They weren't running it on GCP. They were actually buying the hardware and running it in their own data centers, custom tailored to work with Apple Silicon as well. So that was interesting. I
I
don't
did read,
know.
just to be clear though, I read a very similar article. So rarely do I want to say this, but like it was very thinly sourced, right? Because it seemed to come out of it was like out of a white paper that Apple had written where they kind of basically alluded to using the
TensorFlow, yeah.
GPUs, right? But there were no like to our knowledge, there were no acknowledgement of a business deal where Google's like, absolutely, we'll sell you the TPUs. And the reason I bring that up is because Google's kind of stated they're not going to do that. They're not in the hardware business.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's not to say they couldn't do some special deal with Apple. I mean, listen, I'm not saying that can happen,
Yeah.
but I just
Not
think
being in the business doesn't mean you still won't cut a deal.
right. It's like, okay, strategic partner, like we're all good friends. Google's like, well, you do keep us, and because it's gonna be the conversation, be like, you still want to be that default search engine
Oh
on
yeah, yeah, yeah,
this.
yeah.
You know what? We want 20 billion, and we want a box of TPUs. Send them over, right? It
Hey,
could be
boss.
something along those lines, right? So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. And the other thing that I think we should always acknowledge is that like I don't know if this will become an industry trend because like Apple and Nokia have a special kind of hatred between them, right? So it's like I think Apple's just like, no, we're never going to use the chips from what did I say? Did I say Nokia?
You
I
said
mean,
Nokia.
I mean, sorry, I'm getting Nvidia. I'm sorry, I'm getting all my ends confused.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
Google and Nvidia have a special type of hate. So over like longstanding issues around GPUs and computers and all that. So I don't, but that would be huge news. Like if Google came out and was like, "Yep, actually, we're going to start selling TPUs." That would be, that'd be shocking. Actually, that would be,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's like such a weird thing. That seems like they should just announce it and see what happens.
Hey, give us something to talk about.
Yeah, I'd be like, "Oh, whoa, Google's a hardware
Well,
company now."
that's kind of my point, though. It's like you can cut a deal with somebody like Apple because they're going to buy such a volume of it that it's worth your time to support them. Because I mean, if you start selling stuff, you know that selling is only part of the equation, right? There's supporting, and there's documenting, and there's all the and building a sales organization, all that
Mhm.
other nonsense around enterprise software and enterprise hardware. But if it's just like, look, from one mega company to another, if you give us a freight car full of these things, and two engineers on call, we'll call it a day, right? um which is not changing your org chart, right?
Yeah.
That's my point, is this kind of deal is good for the bottom line without having to affect the org chart, if that's actually what happened.
Yeah, and also think this could easily be one of those quiet things where it's like the Google seems like, well, we'll just go build everything in your data center for you,
Yeah.
and we'll support it and we'll do it all for you. And so it's just like, it's kind of like, sometimes we read, it's like, oh, so and so cloud providers building a private version of like
Exactly.
AWS for like a government. And so I think it's something along those lines. So
Yeah.
so not surprising, but it'll be interesting to see. I guess the Apple models did officially come out in beta. The initial reviews of them, they've just basically said the writing ones were a little bit cumbersome to use, but we'll wait. We'll reserve judgment until they actually release it. It's kind of unfair to review the beta stuff, but it is interesting. The TPU start is interesting. So
Yeah.
now, some other news out of our other favorite hyperscaler, AWS. So this, has it come to the point? Has AWS gotten to the point where they're actually going to have to start deprecating some services? That seems to be what everyone's saying. So there's a bunch of
Yeah.
things came out this week that they are essentially either not allowing signups for, or you can't create new repositories. And if you will, there's this pretty good article, like the end of the everything cloud. And of course, AWS has been pretty famously committed to supporting everything forever, which of course we all knew that would eventually come to an end. So it looks like it's coming to an end, and it looks like it's starting with mostly the I guess developer tools. Would that be a fair way to say it? It was the source
Yeah,
control
a couple
code
of,
commit,
the
go ahead,
code commit, the code 9.
which was their IDE, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of tools in that. I mean, I don't know if there's a definite rhyme or reason to them. I think they're just probably some of the least loved projects. Yeah.
I think also like maybe just the least used projects, right? Don't you think? And it does seem like if you're the new CEO of AWS, it feels like he's maybe had this on his list for a long time. Is
Oh, I'm
that like,
sure. I mean,
well, look,
he's
I've got a bunch of stuff here. I think we need to get rid of, and let's just be done with it. Is that simple?
snowmobile.
Well, so do we? I mean, we kid Google about killed by Google has been around forever, right? People start stuff like, do we need to start applying this to AWS? Do we need to be fair in our judgment? I guess I'll put my cards on the table. It's like, I actually think this is just healthy, right? This is just how
Yeah.
normal businesses run. You can't. And some of these things I kind of felt like were dead on arrival. Like, the first time I saw the Amazon Code IDE, I was just like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like this is going to displace Visual Studio, right? It's just, and the same thing with like just all the GitHub repositories. It just feels like that's another area where it's just like how are you possibly going to win there? So I don't know. What do you think? Is it just normal business, or are you starting the Matt Ray killed by AWS Twitter account right now?
I mean, the difference between this and Google is like, Google was killing things that from all, that were popular. that had user bases, and people, I mean, there were times when people just kind of scratched their heads at like, wait, why did you do that? I mean, the Amazon, they actually got rid of a bunch of stuff last year too. So I'm looking at the list, things like OpsWorks Stacks, OpsWorks for Puppet Enterprise, Deep Lens, Sumerian. I mean, just things that I guess did not take off the way they expected. And they decided long term, they didn't have a viable future. And so you put them on life support, you document how to move off, and that's that. What's different though is like Google, was taking things that were not. I mean, readers, the most famous example, they weren't commercially supported, right? So it wasn't like people were paying them for Reader. It was just another like AWS service or Google service that, when you're not paying for things, they're even less, you're on even more tenuous ground. And so I think what Amazon's doing is healthy. I fully expect that they will, offboard their customers somewhere viable, and it could be to other product lines within them, or as the case of Code Commit, showing you how to move to GitHub or GitLab or wherever.
Yeah, I think you said something that's kind of, I never thought about this way, but it's kind of true. It's like, at least on the consumer side, when everything is free from Google, it does feel like wrong. It's like, wait a minute, like I'm used to just using all your free services, and the fact you're taking some away, I'm just angry about it, because it's like I just expect everything to be free. Whereas when you're more on the enterprise, I think you kind of get it. You're like, well, I don't want this was too expensive, or I don't want to pay for this. Or in fact, or like everybody in the team wanted to use GitHub anyway, so it's easy enough to like move people over. So maybe there is like a different, there's just like a different, if you will, connection to it as an enterprise service you're paying for. It's like, yeah, we're just kind of used to them coming and going. So, all right, well, we look forward to. I think someone also posted. I'll just link. Have the link in the show note. I believe the AWS reInvent, some of the initial schedule. I guess it's the session catalog was released, so maybe someone will go through there and like dig through and find some interesting sessions that are going to announce some new features. Because I do expect this. I'm more excited for this AWS reInvent than in a long time. So, man, I have high expectations. Exciting things are going to happen. I don't know what they are, but I'm going to be watching with bated breath, as they say.
I'm the opposite, right? I feel this is going to be like last year's reInvent, where we went into it knowing that it was going to be 90% AI. It's going to happen again. I mean, I guess okay. I can see
You
your
got the
point
new
of being
CEO.
excited about it. The new CEO, right?
I think
That's what makes it.
I believe I believe Jassy descends down from the ivory tower, and he's like, I'm back. He's like, at least for something, he'll be back to like introduce something or talk about something. I feel like that'll just give the crowd a little jolt before he hands it over to his protege, who's like, yep, I came in here and cleaned some stuff up, right? Because I think that's going to be part of the narrative. It's like, yeah, we had too many services. I cleaned it up. We're investing in this new great AI thing called Metis. Who knows? Maybe by then I'll be pronouncing it correctly. We don't know, and they'll be talking about how great it is. So again, I have high hopes. Hopefully, something good will happen. All right. Well, the other thing, CrowdStrike, we talked about it a lot last week. Couple follow-up things, wanted to get your reaction to. So I think this was, I think a lot of people predicted this as well as ourselves. Microsoft, a quote, calls for Windows changes and resilience after CrowdStrike outage. So I think this was pretty predictable. I think Microsoft is now seeing the light about like, let's get everyone out of the kernel. And more importantly, let's get rid of all of our security competitors, which, as we talked about last week, I think I'm okay with. I really don't. I think this is a good idea. I think even though it's kind of, we talked about like a strategy credit earlier, it's like, this is probably the right thing to do. And it is a huge advantage for Microsoft. Now, given a week to think it all over, have you changed your mind on this, Matt?
No, I still think the benefits to the world of Microsoft, like tightening up their OS access, outweigh the downsides, competitively. I think if they need to go back and argue before the EU, hey, we really need to do this, and here are the alternative ways that these competitors can continue to do what they're doing, because they're there. There are definitely alternatives. It's just the right thing to do, which isn't to say that it's going to happen, but at least Microsoft is going to go back and to the Oracle and ask for a different prognosis.
Agreed. All right. So we haven't changed our mind on that. Now, Delta was probably at least the airline and probably the company that most publicly struggled. I mean, there's probably somebody that quietly hasn't said what went wrong, but Delta clearly everybody knows. And the news from their, I guess, executive was some just startling stats here. Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, I think, has said outage cost it $500 million. There were 4,000 flights canceled, and they had to manually reset 40,000 servers. And so they have chosen to sue CrowdStrike, and they've hired no less than David Boyce, who is the famous antitrust attorney that took on Microsoft. He's done a bunch of other stuff as well.
A lot of other stuff, yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's like if David's Boyce is on your team, you really like him, and if he's on the opposite team, you think you hate him with the as much as you possibly can. So I don't know. It seems like it's getting real. So I would assume that, because he's involved, they're going to see, and just throwing out the $500 million. It's like, I don't know. I assume they're going to sue them for like hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more. And the thing that I think is interesting, the thing that we should follow here is that most of the time, the damages that you can seek for most software companies is, if you will, the amount that you paid. So it's like, if you paid me $100 for the license, most of the time it says the max I'm going to give you back is all the money you paid, right? So of course, these large contracts, though, they have all of these other kind of clauses into it, and that can be negotiated, but it's usually capped in some way. So what I think is interesting here is this legal team, if they somehow penetrate that, legal
Did
doctrine,
did
they're like,
did they redline out the,
yeah, I don't, or just the judge
arbitration
is
and
just like, or a judge, jury is like, yeah, I know what the contract said, but this was like sort of such an unprecedented amount of damage that it doesn't apply, right? We're actually
yeah.
applying, something to you. Like if it does, I actually think that could be the end of CrowdStrike, because if they win this,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
everybody else would sue them, right? They would just be, or they'd have to come to some massive class action settlement where it's just like, yeah, we'll give everyone a ton of money to make up for this. So that's why I think this is interesting to follow. But now on the more important aspect here, Matt, is not that. Whether or not CrowdStrike survives, who cares? I just want to ask you this. If you like, which problem is worse? 4,000 flights canceled or having to manually reset 40,000 servers? If I was like, you have to pick one problem to solve, which one
If you're
is
Delta?
easier? Yeah, if you're Delta, you're like, we have two problems here. I can give
Oh,
Delta, I
the
can give you 2,000.
40,000 servers easily, right? That's not customer
Is
facing.
easily what? Is easily the worst problem or the easier problem?
It's the easier problem to stomach, right? If all you had to do was, pay some guys overtime to, go be knock monkeys, and you can also, subcontract that out real fast to, data center management. You can That's not as bad a problem as it sounds. The customers canceling means, that has so many downstream effects, and that's just pretending like those 40,000 servers weren't doing anything. But I mean, public facing, all those cancellations means that you have, your customer support is tied up for months,
Mhm.
trying to deal with, rebooking and refunds and, threats and, credits and all that stuff. That's horrible and very public. If all you had to do was reboot a bunch of servers, that's nothing. That
So
said, it's
it's
not
funny to
just
ask
rebooting a
this.
bunch of servers. That's what caused the 500 out.
Right. Well, the part I guess I was wondering, I was like, I really want to know more about this though. The 40,000 servers, like, where are the servers? Like, how
Yeah.
many, like, because I was thinking about at the airport. It's like, well, like, how much IT staff does like Delta have at like your airport? Like, the display terminals that were all
Yeah.
like blue screened. I don't,
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
even know if that's Delta. I don't, I'm just not sure. Like, because that's the part I don't know. It's like, well, if you had like 40,000 servers like spread out like throughout
Every
the world,
airport. Yeah. Every
and then
airport.
it's like, can you just call the, like, I don't know, at that point, do you just enlist the ticket agents and the counter agents to be like, yeah, I know this isn't your job.
Yeah.
What I need you to do is like
Yeah.
go hit the reset button and stay on the phone to me. And
Yep.
I'm gonna walk you through deleting this file. Like, because that would be hard if they were widely distributed and you didn't have like an IT staff you could like quickly, but maybe you're right.
Well,
Maybe you would
obviously
hire
they
people.
must. They must have somebody who deals with IT for every airport.
I
There's
would.
somebody on call, possibly a subcontractor, who is responsible for, it's not, the people working the ticket counter, they're not your IT staff. Somebody is
Right.
running that IT in every airport. Think about, you've got a dozen, check-in lines, you've got,
Yeah.
every single gate has to have software that can be turned on and off if if they're not running that gate, if that's not a dedicated gate, plus all the back end stuff. So they definitely have probably, staffed IT people in every airport.
All right. Well, listen, if somebody knows the answer to this, and you can obviously send me an email to questions at software defined talk, or find me in Slack. You don't have to, like, I won't say your name or anything. I want someone to tell me, like, okay, of the 40,000 servers, like, where were they? And then I'm just uneducated on this airport thing. I think what you're saying is true, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, does the IT staff at the airport, is it a big deal? Was it easy or was it hard? Because I could see it either way. I could be like, oh, well, these are
Well,
all in the
it's
data
obviously
center.
hard to coordinate that many
Right, but you could
that
see,
many
like, if there
people.
was just, like, in a few data centers, right, and it'd be annoying. It'd be like, "Ugh," the data center staff is just like, "I cannot work sucked today."
Nope.
All we did was walk around and reboot stuff for, like, the entire day. That part I get, like, but if it's widely distributed around the world and you don't have access, or you're
Right.
kinda like, you don't, it's like IT staff's like maybe, deals with like one or two servers a month, suddenly everything has to be rebooted the same day. Like, that's just going to be like, you don't have enough staff to do it. So anyway, someone write in, tell me what went down here. Because I would love to hear how how they actually got fixed. And two other things I just wanted to say here. Because I think I'm sort of like unsure about just endpoint protection. I kind of feel like, I don't know if I really need CrowdStrike or not, right? I'm sort of like dubious about like the whole kind of, if you will, category. But two things kind of stuck out. So on the kind of against CrowdStrike, there was an article. It says why the CrowdStrike bug hit banks hard, and it was really good because it basically just says that like the reason banks like CrowdStrike is it helps them with audits. That's the net of it. You can read the whole article, but it kind of just calls into question, like, is this really, protecting us, or is it just helping with audits? Not saying audits aren't important, but it's not necessarily going to help you. So if you're sort of against endpoint management, you read that article. But if you read this other article, it's about how a North Korean a fake IT worker tried to infiltrate us. So what they did was this person that didn't really exist got a job for a tech company. They were issued a laptop, and immediately, as soon as the laptop, if you will, booted up and joined the corporate network, they immediately saw it try to inject malware into the corporate system. That's all it was doing. And of course, like, I don't know if this was a CrowdStrike customer, but the endpoint protection system ultimately, kicked in so much that the IT staff like called. They basically like were calling the new employee, like, hey, he's like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? We're seeing some weird stuff. And then, so I think first they tried to call him, and then they did have a phone call. They're like, hey, let's get on a web meeting or something. And they were like, oh, no, I'm busy. I can't do it. And then they just like hung up the phone and were never seen again. So that would be, so that was clearly like a North Korean person trying to, if you will, inject this company with. And so again, endpoint protection did its job there. So that would be like the pro case, right? That would be like, well, that's why you want stuff like CrowdStrike. So I don't know. I don't know if that like it settles my mind or makes me believe in endpoint management more. But I kind of feel like I'm still kind of like, I'll just roll with what Microsoft and Mac OS have. I still think that's what my default position is, which is not surprising. It's just another version of the default lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's do a little lightning round, then we'll get out of here. Some things that just jumped out. So just your reaction to these things. You don't have to give us, a dissertation. But one was Apple Maps. Are they better than Google Maps? It looks like Apple has been doing a really good job, and they finally launched their maps on the web, so you can use them like Google Maps. I don't know what's going on in Australia. Do you have a preference between Google Maps or Apple Maps?
Use Google Maps. Matter? Yeah, I'm still Google Maps. I use Apple Maps if I'm walking and I need it on my watch.
Okay, that's about it. So again, default's lifestyle. If all you have is Apple stuff, use the Apple stuff.
Yeah, but Google still seems more reliable.
All right. Well, I've been using Apple Maps mostly because I like the Apple stuff more, and I think it has gotten a lot better. Whether or not it's better than Google, it's always hard to say. I just feel like, but it works good enough. So there you go. There you go.
And I'm used to Google. That's the problem.
Yeah. So you got to kind of adjust. All right. So we'll see. Apple Maps. It sounds like if you're an Apple user, use it. If not, use Google. Now, what about WhatsApp, Matt? So it is now the another big win for Facebook was they basically say they're now 100 million people in the US. That's the key thing, are using WhatsApp. So this is them taking on, if you will, Apple Messages. Are you a WhatsApp person? Are you an Apple Messages person? What are you doing down in Australia?
I mean, person to person, it's usually Apple, but WhatsApp is kind of dominating the Facebook to messaging transition, right? So every school function, there will be a WhatsApp group. Because I don't know that, I don't know why those don't turn into instant messaging, but they don't, right? So I'm on like a bunch of like school WhatsApp groups, for fathers of this grade or, parents of that grade. My son's basketball team has a WhatsApp. So it's definitely there, but then person to person, people just start with SMS usually, which inevitably turns into Apple Messages if you're both on that.
So I think it is. I think we can say WhatsApp has won the group chat market. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Like if you have more than 3 people, and especially if you have like a group of like unknown people that are not super close,
it's the unknown people.
That's why it's like, hey, let's just go with WhatsApp, because those 2 people with Android are going to mess up the group chat in Apple Messages. So let's just use WhatsApp. And it is actually better. I would agree for group chats. And more importantly, I'll give, Zuckerberg credit. He can use this in his next press release. We're moving my fantasy football league. We're moving to the what? It's slow. The migration is slow. We only have half the team in there.
From where?
We're moving to the WhatsApp group chat going forward. So that is a huge win that I'm sure Zuckerberg will want to tout in his next press release.
It also works especially well for country to country.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, you probably don't see that much in the US, but here it's like, oh, I'm messaging with people in Singapore or India, and everyone just immediately switches to WhatsApp because in some of those countries, you know, text messaging is not, or in some countries, text messaging is weird, and you know, they may or may not have Apple devices, and WhatsApp is just the lingua franca.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations, WhatsApp, on winning the group chat wars. So I think we're all there. The other one I just thought was funny was, Sonos, the smart speaker provider. They have apologized for messing up its ass. It's sorry. Let me start that over. The other one I want to talk about was Sonos. They have apologized for messing up their app, and it has offered to basically a new roadmap to fix everything. So this is sort of like bad day to be in product management at Sonos. They have created an app so bad that the CEO had to apologize to it. So are you a Sonos user at all?
No,
Use it all? I didn't think so. Neither am I, but I just thought it was funny. So I feel bad for the product manager at Sonos. I probably wasn't there. They probably were like, it's not ready. And someone's like, just put it out there. It doesn't matter. But sometimes
who's going to notice? And like,
who's going to notice?
This is our interface to our product.
Although somebody in the Software Electronics Slack said they never used the Sonos app and they didn't care, but they love Sonos. So it's like, well, maybe that was the decision. It was like, most people don't use the app. Well, it didn't work out so well. And then finally here, just your quick reaction to this one, Matt. Should Google be worried? OpenAI has announced Search GPT. It's AI powered search engine. Is this it? Is this the first legitimate contender to take real market share from Google? I know there's Perplexity, but I don't think that's had any real meaningful impact.
No, but yes, right. I think probably the quality of it is not that good, but as Google continues to enshittify their own product, Search GPT will catch up with it and surpass it. And I think the place where this comes into play is where Google was just giving you the answers instead of search results. I think, that's where the real competition will come from. So it's not search as much as just answering your questions. And, Google's been going more and more into that space lately, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Search GPT is going to be the one that wins this, but this is a milestone in the fact that everybody knew this was coming. It's here. Now we're going to, now the race has started.
I agree. I think it is. And I do think the main question I have is, like, if they come up with a way to put ads in Search GPT that is acceptable, that we sort of like, we're okay with, that'll be the moment that Google really needs to be worried. Because they sort of like, if they figure out the way to monetize it in a way that's, if you will, hard for Google to replicate, that I think is a moment when Google really needs to be worried, because they're going to be in a real defensive posture. So we'll see. I don't know. OpenAI, love them, hate them, anything can possibly happen. And of course, I think we've now learned this is when they announce something and you can't immediately play with it, it means it probably doesn't exist. So we shouldn't, be too worried that they actually have something. So I think we've learned that, because I think only now is the quote unquote voice OpenAI thing that we all saw like months ago coming out. So I'm sure they have some time to figure it out. So, all right. Well, some listener feedback, man, I wanted to go over. One, I sent some stickers to JD in Texas. He messaged me in the Slack, which he felt like was much easier. So yes, if you want stickers, you can just find me in the Slack like JD did, and just send your postal address. But if you're an email person, just send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I'll be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. Also, Matt, I wanted to read this comment and maybe you can react to it. Some comments about Copilot in the Slack this week. It says, quote, Microsoft Copilot is garbage. This is a person trying to get it to create a pie chart.
Well, that was
86% something and 14% for the rest. And it goes on to say it generated a pie chart with 4 entries, adding up to 211%, and the word member misspelled despite its appearance in the prompt. And the final quote was, "This thing isn't threatening anyone's job." I think that was someone
it was
close.
me.
Was that you, or was that someone close to you
Yes, it was a
that you
family
were
member,
quoting?
whose corporate overlords have signed up for Google Copilot, and uh, across the board, everyone's response to those of them that had used it was, "This is terrible," because as soon as you like start to get close with maybe explaining via prompt engineering what you're supposed to do, you're out of tokens.
I thought it was funny because, I mean, without revealing too much, I think we could say the person close to you is like, I'm going to describe them as a normal person. They're not
Yes.
necessarily, they don't love technology. So I just think it's funny. It's sort of like the real people, when they're getting you, they're actually getting exposed to this. They were thoroughly not impressed, which has been
Nice.
kind of my own, because I do think I actually love it. I still think I love all the LLMs, and I think if you just kind of master like what they're good at, I would agree. Like charts and like any type of images, I have not had a lot of success with that,
Oh,
because
no.
the thing that's great about text is like if it makes something wrong, you can easily fix it. But if it
Right.
like generates a piece of art or a chart, you're just like, this isn't
Yeah, it was
useful.
just garbage.
Yeah, and then you try to like do another prompt and you're like, this will just be faster if I do it myself. So
Yeah,
I don't know, you just kind of have to know. But again, when you're talking to a normal person trying to do their job and you start to say that stuff, they're like, I don't have time for this crap. I have to do my real job.
right.
And they just immediately go out there. So I thought that was funny. We'll continue to report on, if you will, co-pilot from normal people. Maybe that'll become a recurring segment. I think it's funny to read some of these quotes. Also, Craig Box, he's going one step further. We talked about Cote's universal foods theory, right? He mentioned like every culture has certain foods that appear over and over. Well, Craig Box says what you could generalize this to just meat and pastry, which I think is right. So it's like good software architecture. We just keep getting to the core construct. So maybe the secret is just meat and pastry. So I like
There
that.
you
Good
go.
job. Good suggestion from Craig. And also, I know many people are looking for jobs. It's kind of been a tough time, and those people have gotten jobs. But there is a job that I posted specifically in the Software Defined Talk Slack, surprisingly in the jobs channel. It's a senior technical marketing manager at Red Hat, and it's for the OpenShift virtualization, I guess, product line. So this
Ooh,
is what I want someone to do. I want someone to apply for this job and get this job. And during the interview, you can say this. You can say the following. It's like, and they say, well, how are you going to promote this? You can say, I'm going to promote this by being on Software Defined Talk, where I'm going to do kind of an interview about what's going on here, because I actually want someone to come on the show. I've read about OpenShift virtualization. I know a little bit about it, but I always want to know more. So I want someone to get this job, get up to speed on everything, and then just email me and you can come on the show and you can explain it to all of us what we need to know about it. So there you go. So hopefully someone will use that, and that will put you over the hump in actually getting the job. Or if anyone from Red Hat wants to come on and talk about OpenShift virtualization, just find me in the Slack or send me an email at questions@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Now, we got some conferences coming up. We got DevOps Days Birmingham. That's August 19th through the 21st. Cote's got Spring One VMware Explorer US. That's August 26th to the 29th. There's DevOps Days Antwerp, September 4th through the 5th. And then there's SRE London 2024, September 19th through the 20th. And who knows, maybe in the coming weeks, Matt Ray, you'll have a conference you want to talk about with
maybe.
your new employer, which I'm going to try not to say incorrectly. So I'm just not going to say it all this week. So stay tuned for that. All right, Matt, having said all of that, what is your recommendation this week?
My recommendation is the onboarding experience for my new job.
Well, it's good. Are you recommending that it's good, or recommend? I guess you have.
I'm
If you're
recommending that
recommending
it's
it's
good.
bad, that's not a good
No,
experience.
no, no.
What's good about it?
Just so far, everything has been very smooth. They've, so I'm starting a new job with Wiz. They sent me a big box of swag. So I got, first day of school outfit to wear, backpack and all that fun stuff. They sent me a laptop. I'm quite happy with the laptop I got. They have scheduled, they've sent me a whole bunch of IT onboarding stuff. They've sent me training materials for my new role, and they have sent me like meetings for my second day with IT for Q&A if I have any issues. And they had those scheduled so they were doing, a bunch of new hires are all starting at the same time. And so they have, meetings every 4 hours because it's an internationally distributed workforce.
Oh, really? So
or
can you
maybe it's
just
every 6 hours, but
show up
yeah.
to anyone you want to go to, or is it
Well,
like
the first one they sent, the first invite I got was like 1 a.m. I was like, oh, seriously? And then, and then other invites showed up. I was like, oh, cool. I could just pick which one I want.
okay? That's
Yeah.
nice. Well, it's good. Well, it's good. It
Yeah.
sounds like they've
Very,
that's
very
always
professional.
yeah. Well, there's like some magic number. I don't know what the size of Wiz is, but there's like this sweet spot between like the company's too small, so there's literally no one knows anything about onboarding. And then there's the other end where the company's too big, where onboarding is just this faceless set of like web portals. But there's like some sweet spot where a company's like just the right size. It's almost like they have enough people that they've thought about onboarding, but not too many people that everyone's given up. So it sounds like you're in the sweet spot. So good job, Wiz. Keep up the good onboarding experience. All right. My recommendation this week, news to everyone, I'm sure the Olympics are going on. I have actually really enjoyed the Peacock Gold Zone coverage. So it's basically you just turn it on, and it's like, if you will, if you've ever watched NFL Red Zone, or if you want to think of it, it's just a curated way to watch the Olympics. Is that the announcers do all the work? They just kind of flip around between all the different events when exciting things are happening. And it's great because you don't have to know anything. You're just like, oh, I'm watching the basketball game, then I'm watching fencing, then I'm watching swimming, and they're kind of giving you all the highlights in real time. So if you haven't tried it, if you like the Olympics, I definitely think Peacock is the way to go. It is they stream all the events, but more importantly, they make it very easy. So you can always just use the Gold Zone to watch everything. Matt, are you watching the Olympics? Are you cheering on the United States or Australia?
Blocked in my region.
The Olympics are the entire thing?
No, not the entire thing.
Oh, Peacock is.
But Peacock is, and a lot of YouTube embeds are,
Oh,
and so yeah, it's the local channels carry stuff. So yeah, we're able to watch some stuff online,
all right. Well,
but not like not the American feeds. So
all right.
I get all the Australian highlights.
Maybe you and I will talk afterwards and be like, I don't know, maybe there's this thing called tail scale, which of course we've never used for this purpose, but
No.
maybe there's a way. So, all right, well, for all of those that have listened this far, we appreciate it. Feel free to go check out all the show notes looking in the podcast player you're in right now. You can also go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/478, and you will see all of the things we talked about and many more stories we didn't get to. You will also find links to everything. You can follow us on all the social media. You can watch us on YouTube. You can email us. You can even read a book that Cote wrote called Digital WTF. There's a deep cut. I haven't talked about it in a long time. So lots of fun stuff there. And with that, we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
All right, Matt, good as always. Who is this? Jesus. Let's see. One. Good to see JJ, but he didn't respond, so I guess he's gone. And then System Sky. Yep. I like CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is going to try to negotiate 5 to 10 years of CrowdStrike for free. Yes. I think everyone's getting CrowdStrike.
I think we're going to end up with CrowdStrike brought to you by Delta.
I think it could be. And then I don't know, is it Jesus probably here? I like a lot of good points here, Jesus, right? Endpoint protection needs really vary with the company culture. Software engineering folks may not need it, but what about the sales team? I think you're right. I think that is the hard part. That's the thing I struggle with, right? It's like savvy users probably don't need it, but who is a savvy user? And I think if you're a CISO, you don't want to ever be like, oh, I gave this one team permission not to have it, and then have it come back to you,
Right.
and people get mad at you. So I don't know. That's the whole thing. What's this other one he says here? Also remember that Sonos sued Google, and Google had to remove remote volume controls from Chromecasting from Android. I did not know that. Very, very funny. I like that. So there we have it. All right, Matt. Hey, before we get out of here, Matt, just a quick, because you're doing onboarding. I was having lunch with someone. I wanted to get your opinion on this. Where do you stand on when you get a computer from your company? Are you I'm going to basically use my company computer for everything, or do you maintain two separate computers? Kind of one for, if you will, your own personal use in life, as well as your work life. Because what I found is it's pretty mixed, and I think people that have been at jobs longer, it seems like it's subtly it encroaches on it. It's sort of like if you've been at a job for like maybe more than like 5 years, it almost feels like your work computer becomes like the computer. Whereas if you only been a job for a few weeks, you kind of have this division of labor. What is your approach as you think about this?
It all comes down to endpoint management. Really, it's whether or not it's my computer or the company's computer. They did buy the computer, but if they have agents running on it that are reporting how I use it, it becomes their computer and it gets turned off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I have a new laptop. I haven't installed things on it yet, other than updates and you know uh, but I need to see what it, what how it gets managed is what's going to determine. My previous job, uh, they gave me a budget for a computer, but I had gotten one at my last job, and so I never bought a computer for that job. So I was fully self managed the entire time, and I still have it, right? So. Um, I may be rocking, two laptops going forward. We'll see. I mean, I kind of expect a security company to lock it down.
Yeah, no, it would definitely make sense. But I think your answer is really, like, really right on target. It really kind of comes down to the management by the corporation. Like, yeah, if it's because I think you're kind of right. Like companies, and oftentimes really small companies, they kind of depend on you to be doing stuff, right? And you kind of back to what we were saying earlier. It's like we expect you to kind of do what's necessary in the hygiene of a computer. And in that case, I do think
No, yeah.
it sort of becomes more of like your own machine. Whereas, yeah, if it comes like
Now I am a threat vector to a global security company.
yeah. Well, and also, but I think you're right, but I think how the laptop is shipped to you, if it comes with like a company image on it, and it
Well, that's
comes
what
with
it didn't.
all that
That's what
stuff.
I'm
Yeah,
still like, waiting for the shoe to drop because I haven't gone through the IT setup yet. So,
yeah. So, all
um,
right, we have to maybe report back, but it would make
so
sense.
far they've asked me to install Okta something or other for my phone. And
Mhm.
so I'm like, ooh, what are you putting on my phone? Because that's
Yeah,
similarly
yeah. The phone is another area that's always hard because it's just
because
yeah. All
they
right.
obviously
Well,
they didn't give me a phone,
yeah.
but
Well, we'll complain about that next week. That'll be in next week's episode
we'll
where
see.
I
Yeah.
got I have things to complain about on mobile device management for sure. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for everyone that joined us watching the stream live. It's always fun to have you here. And hopefully, those of you watching online and YouTube enjoy it as well. And with that, we will talk to you next time.